So for this first Dollar Tree craft upcycle, I'm going to be utilizing one of these wooden decor plaques from the craft section at Dollar Tree and a piece of this cardstock paper that I purchased from a collections book at Michael's, and it comes with 48 sheets in the book, and it's a holiday edition. And yes, I did use a coupon, so I got it half off. Next up, I'm going to be using this vinyl decal that I created using my Cricut machine. And I'm aware not everybody has a Cricut machine, but there are other ways around this. You can go to Google Images and print an image off and transfer it on as well. But for the interest of time, I did go ahead and print this off my Cricut machine simply because if I continue to make all of my DIYs exclusive to Dollar Tree, I will never get any use out of my Cricut and it's just sitting there collecting dust. And since I am going to be using these DIYs in my home, this is how I'm going to be making it this time around. So if you want to see how the magic happens and how all of this comes together, then all you have to do is stick around. So to begin, we'll start by removing this tag and then we're going to trace the image onto the back portion of the cardstock. So there's no fancy equipment necessary here, just a regular old number 2 pencil, and I'm tracing down the image onto the cardstock. And this is how it looks once it's all traced out. I hope it's showing up on camera. And now we just have to cut it out. From there, before I place my image onto the board, I'm going to take my trusty old Sharpie marker and I'm going to go around the edges of the tree with the Sharpie marker just to give it a more polished look. Okay, so the Sharpie idea was a complete fail. Dragging that marker along the edges was a total catastrophe and was making scribble marks all over, so I decided to use this Serum Coat black ink paint and just throw a coat all over the entire backing and leaving the front in its natural state so that when I'm ready to adhere the cardstock, it will apply nicely. It's your choice if you want to leave it in its natural state. That's perfectly fine. It's entirely up to you. And so now we're ready to add some of this Mod Podge onto our board. So I'm going to try to give it an even as coverage as possible with this Mod Podge being very generous and spreading it out as best as I can to try to avoid those air bubbles and wrinkles. Then lay the cardstock down as such. Then you're going to want to comb over it to get out all of those air bubbles. And I'm just using my trusty old Sharpie marker just to go over it and smoothen out that Mod Podge as evenly as possible. And then you're going to allow it some drying time. So normally, once you have allowed it to completely dry, you can go on to the next step, which is to seal it with a coat of Mod Podge. But because I'm going to be adding this decal image onto it, I'm going to set my decal on first and then add the Mod Podge on top of the decal so that I can seal both of them in together at the same time. So this is what you should be left with now that your image is transferred, and now all that's left to do is to apply another coat of that Mod Podge right on top. And I'm just pouring it right on top of that image so that I can spread it out accordingly and seal both things in together and allow it some drying time. And here's a sneak peek at what the final product should look like. It's actually still in its drying process. It's still a little tacky, but I just wanted to show that the Mod Podge does indeed dry clear. And so this is what you should be left with. And so I'm probably going to go with my little X-Acto knife and cut off the trimming once it has a chance to completely dry and set. And feel free to poke that hole right back where it was so that you could use it as a hanging decor, but I think I'm going to use mine as a stand decor. So I hope this illustration is of any inspiration to anyone who's looking for any kind of ideas as to what to make of these little Christmas tree wooden plaques. So for this next project, we're going to be repurposing this little Dollar Tree Christmas tag that just says Hello Winter on it. And the image is cute enough on its own, but we're going to take it up a notch, and we're going to begin by removing this tag, if you will, and then just undoing the bow on the ribbon that it has and putting it to the side for future purpose later on. And we're just going to hit it with some sandpaper and try to remove some of this glitter so that the paint could adhere properly. And this is what we have after hitting it with some of that sandpaper and taking down all of that glitter. And I suppose you can use the back side of it, but I'm going to go ahead and use the front. And I'm just going to throw a coat of this red paint that I had in my stash. And it's just some regular red chocolate paint. It's the only red that I had available. So, and here I'm showing you that I have another one of my vinyl images, and it just says, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, but if the white runs out, I'll drink the red. And I figured it would go well with a red background, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it a nice generous coat of this red paint, and I suppose I'm probably going to have to use more than one coat because of the image on the front, but that's okay. You got to have a little bit of patience with these projects. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on painting until I get with the coverage that I'm satisfied with. So, because none of my DIYs are perfect and they're all trial and error, I like to share with you the pros and the cons and the stuff that I go through. So, this was the original side with the design on it, and as many coats as I gave it, you can still see the wording showing through where it says hello and part of the image of the snowman. So, I got tired of giving it so many coats, and I decided that I'm going to use the back side as the front. So now I have it all completely painted, so I don't have a finished side on both, and then I went ahead and painted the trim as well. So now all that's left to do is to adhere the image down to the tag as such. From there, it's time to attach my image, and for that, all I have to do is remove it from the transfer backing and position it accordingly. And you want to make sure to align it and center it as best as you can because you don't want to remove any of that paint. So once you allow the image to transfer onto the tag, that's it. You have to leave it in that position. So once I'm satisfied with the alignment, I'm going to go over it with my fingers gently as such before grabbing my Cricut tool. And go over it ever so gently with my Cricut tool, being mindful not to peel off any of that paint onto the transfer. So now it's just a matter of removing that transfer tape to reveal the image underneath. And I like to start at a corner diagonally, if you will, so that I can hold on to the tag and apply pressure going in the same direction in one even stroke, if you will, as you see me doing here, until I'm able to reveal the entire image. And there you have it. This is what you should be left with once you remove the transfer off your vinyl. So now it's just a matter of hitting it with a coat of Mod Podge as well to seal it in. From there, we're going to hit it with that coat of Mod Podge as mentioned, and you're going to want to be very generous because we're going to be sealing in that vinyl. So you want to give full, complete strokes from top to bottom, as you see me doing here, going in the same direction and spreading out that Mod Podge as evenly as possible over the transfer vinyl so that we can give it complete coverage. And do not be alarmed, this does dry clear, so it's not ruining your image. And here is a preview of what it should look like once it's, completely done. It's still in the process of drying, as you can see, but I just wanted to show that it does dry clear, as I mentioned. And so now I'm going to be stringing it up to its partner because I did go ahead and buy another tag, and I'm going to be making this a set of two. From there, I'm going to be preparing that partner to that first tag, and what you see me doing here is wiping down the surface and getting rid of any of the residue left over from the sanding of the glitter, and I'm going to be hitting it with a coat of this white chalk paint. Hopefully it'll give it a much better coverage than that other red paint, and I'm going to continue to paint this little tag accordingly to prepare it for the next step. So from there, this is what you should be left with once your paint is completely dry. And I did go ahead and give it a full complete coverage on both sides. And by the way, that white chalk paint worked much better than the red paint. I mean, you can still vaguely see a little bit of the image poking through, but that's okay because I'm going to be using the other side. And so then I'm just going to be adhering this little vinyl that I printed out that says Wake, Pray, and Slay, and I'm going to be transferring it onto my tag. From there, pretty much as we did in the first illustration with the first tag, you're just going to apply your transfer image and try to center it as best as you can, hopefully getting it as even as possible so that you don't have any mishaps and have to peel up any of that paint, and you're just going to press it down as such. From there, we're going to go ahead and peel up that transfer sheet to reveal that vinyl image from underneath, and we're going to start at the corner diagonally once again. And for some reason, this is just so satisfying to me whenever I can get it all off in one complete pull. I just love it. And so this is what you should be left with, and now it's just a matter of giving it another blast of that Mod Podge on top so that we can seal and lock in that vinyl, making this a cohesive partner to the first tag that we made. So for this next craft upcycle decal image, I have for you this little arrow wooden decor signage that I got from the Dollar Tree, and it's just hung by this little jupe, and it's meant to be an arrow. But what I plan to do is remove that jupe and turn it around in this position, and to me, I see a house. So I'm going to be taking off that jupe and preparing it as such for this craft. From there, I'm going to go ahead and prime the entire wooden board with a complete coat of this white paint. And I'm going to go ahead and do both sides as such and give it complete coverage. And here's a look at what you should be left with once you've given it a complete coverage on both sides. And I went ahead and taped off this board right underneath that triangular portion with some painter's tape. And I'm going to hit it with a coat of this black paint just on the top triangle portion. From there, I'm going to be giving it a coat of that black paint, and as you see, I have it turned upside down because I'm trying to paint away from the tape to avoid any seepage and bleeding underneath the painter's tape. So I'm painting from the tape away. And here's a look at what you should be left with once you remove that satisfying painter's tape. And I did go ahead and do both sides simply because I had poured out more than enough of that black paint, so I might as well have put it to use. So now all that's left is to once again apply another transfer image onto the board, and I did go ahead and print out this image off my Cricut, and it just says Silent Night, Holy Night on it with the little manger. And so I'm just removing it from the transfer tape from the backing, and I'm going to align it as such. And notice I don't use any precise measurements. I don't whip out my ruler for any of these projects. I just eyeball it. So I'm going to center it as such and adhere it down to my board. From there, following in the steps of our previous projects, we're going to hit it with another blast of that Mod Podge, and we're going to be generous, and we're going to spread it evenly and diligently all over the entire board, taking it all the way up to the top of that triangle portion on top of the black. And don't worry, it does dry clear, and you're going to want to give full, complete, even strokes so that you don't get any streaking, and it dries as evenly and flawless as possible. And here's another look at the completed project now that it's completely done, and it's still a little tacky, and so I'm allowing it some drying time. And I did go ahead and leave the back as such, and I'm okay with that. I do love overall how it came out. I enjoy creating this, and I hope you guys liked it too.